There are some things I'll take a chance on, but life is already enough of a gamble for me to put my whole nest egg in the share market. So I take a calmer path. By investing in private credit, I know my money could be growing, not yo-yoing.
From Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the COB. Great to be here with you on the 6th of October. What a day it was. Really interesting moves in terms of the market. So when I was on air through the 10 o'clock hour, we were talking about flirting with record highs. And then we lost all of our steam, didn't we? Yeah, really sort of a loss of momentum and then just bouncing along there. It's almost like market participants got a bit spooked, but I dare say some of the moves would have been exaggerated, and that is because much of the country is on a public holiday, including people here in Sydney. It's like the pandemic outside. It's really quite eerie how dramatic the difference is today in the city. So at one point, we were up above that 9,000 level for the S&P ASX 200. Currently, we're sitting at 8,973, so a loss of about 0.2%. Of course, we're seeing a lot of strength around the region, and we are still watching U.S. futures into positive territory. So we will discuss that all with my guest who's coming up. What happened to that record run? Will we retest highs yet again? What will it take? And of course, Bitcoin, speaking of record runs, has been just going off. Really great interview in the previous hour with BTC Markets. You can find that online shortly if you've missed it. Also, it's worthwhile mentioning that gold did hit a record high as well in the Asian session. But given our region, I thought it was worthwhile pointing to Japan's new era. So the first female premier has been elected in Japan. Japanese shares surged to record highs. The yen sank after the fiscal dove Sanae Takaichi was elected to lead the ruling party and become the next prime minister. So Takaichi's victory has raised the chances that the Bank of Japan will avoid lifting interest rates when it meets this month. So interesting dynamic playing out in Japan. Look, as far as sectors, I alluded to that gold price hitting a record high. So in terms of sectors, that's why we're seeing, gold miners don't want to come up on screen. The gold miners, trust me, are doing pretty well. Thank you very much. If I take a look at, a couple of the biggest names, they're really what has stopped us from seeing losses in the materials space. Northern Star is up by close to 2%. Evolution is up by, I think that's 2.5%. Don't have my glasses with me. All right, lithium. So we're talking a lot right now about the US and its administration taking stakes potentially in critical minerals, and we've seen a little bit of an uptick for PLS. It's up by 2%. PLS was incidentally covered on the call today. If you haven't caught up with today's edition of the call, it was a good one. Hope you can do so. Tech was the best performing, not the best performing sector, the worst performing sector, proving to be a bit of a drag on the market overall. You can see WiseTech down by about 2%. Xero was on the call as well. You'll have to listen to that episode to find out what my expert guests had to say. But sector-wise, safe to say that 7 out of 11 sectors are lower. Utilities was the best performing sector. Capricorn Metals has increased its quarterly gold production to a record level. Auckland Airport is welcoming the New Zealand Commerce Commission's decision to rule out the need for an inquiry into airport regulation. And the day began with good news from Electro-Optic Systems. It's won a contract with an Australian Defence Force supplier worth nearly $110 million. And Vecton has secured its first $8 million order from its repeat NATO customer within the European defence system. Meantime, LTR Pharma has increased its shareholding in Levomega from 33% to 43%. And here's an interesting one. The Brisbane Broncos, I know, it's a listed company, it's crazy, hit a record high today after the rugby team won its first league title in 19 years. And check out European Lithium, up by close to 120%. today on one of those overarching themes that the US is eyeing a stake in critical metals, which is a Greenland-based project, but European Lithium has a 60% stake in that project. So yeah, pretty interesting and pretty dramatic share price rise. That was the stock of the day. I'll bring you analysis on that in just a moment, but let's get to our special guest today, Keith Della Vedova, who's joining us from CPS Capital over in Perth. Keith, nice to see you there. What do you make of, that the dynamics that are pushing European lithium higher today, being the Trump administration potentially, looking to take a stake in critical minerals?
Yeah, thanks, Nadine. I was just going to point out as well, Perth is the busiest part of the market as well. So I'm not sure everyone else is on a public holiday, but Perth is holding everybody up today.
Yep.
We're still hard at work. But looking at the critical metals elements that you're talking about, looking at European lithium today, there's a lot of speculation as to where the Trump administration in the US will look to. I know there's a potential meeting coming up with Albanese as well, where he's offering up our critical metals. So that's the reason why there's nothing official from around European lithium. They were heavily sold off over the last sort of 12 to 18 months with just about every lithium stock. You spoke about Pilbara, you look at Liontown, all these companies are all a bit beaten up. So what we're seeing is a lot of these companies that were massively oversold getting some positive news. They're going to run particularly hard, especially with how oversold they were. So that's why we're seeing a rather large run on European lithium today. And I think that thematic actually follows through into the rest of the market as well, particularly in the small cap end. What we're seeing is a lot of optimism about what can sort of happen going forward, given there is a new renewed interest in the critical metals and even precious metals from the US. It's not something that they're sort of highly used to. It's more an Australian thing, an African thing, a Canadian thing. So given there's a lot of appetite for domestic suppliers in the US, that's just created a lot of opportunities for the junior end of the market.
So Keith, would you be, if you were, in European lithium, would you be tempted to take some profits today if you'd made them? Or, could this be sort of a binary outcome if you're a specky, high-risk investor, keep your money in to see where it ends?
Look, I think with these things, I always tend to have a look at where's it been and what's your position. Typically something that runs up 120, 130% in a day on good volume, which has been trading down significantly. Is it a bad thing to take some of your money off the table? Probably not. And it just depends on what percentage of your portfolio that particular stock is as well. So there's many factors in between. Can all this media speculation go away and there's actually no deal with the US government and couldn't go back to 10 cents? Yeah, that's a definite possibility. So, it's a double-edged sword here. They can go on and do a deal, and this might be at sort of 50, 60 cents. But there's also the downside here to going, well, if it doesn't turn out, it's going back down to where it was. So wouldn't be sort of, if it was me personally, I wouldn't be exiting my entire position. But given from where it's come, would I be emptying some of it? Yeah. Probably we're protecting some profits given the run that's been on there today.
Now, I understand, Keith, that you've actually been on a bit of a US tour as of late. So where were you focused if it wasn't critical minerals?
Let's say we were on the West Coast just over the last couple of weeks visiting some projects and investments that we've made over the last sort of 3 to 6 months. One of them being a company called Haranga Resources, HAR on the ASX, a gold project that was previously in production, and a couple of past owners have struggled to actually get this back into production because of a few difficulties with getting the right mix of people and the right mix of strategy going through. But with the gold price where it is at the moment, this is actually a significant opportunity to restart this mine and do further exploration, which is untested. So we did a tour of the site. You could see all the mill, you could see all the old core, chat to the people that work there, and sort of get a good feel that this is an opportunity to, in a pro mining area as well. We're actually staying in a small town called Sutters Creek. And there was a lot of people going around and saying, it's good that you guys are going to restart the mine. They were actually very pro what's going on in this area and want to see this mine come back into production. So there's a lot of other companies out there that are sort of starting to stake claims and do exploration. But, this is actually a past producing mine. It's being dewatered at the moment. They're going to do some additional drilling. But the ability to go from, into a restart is a lot shorter of time frame than what other companies out there are doing. So it's a pretty exciting project what they've got out there, and if they can, if all the ducks can line up for this could be in production, relatively quickly.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's interesting. So apart from Harenga Resources, what else were you looking at there?
Yeah, so we caught up with the team at PVW Resources, which again has recently acquired some gold and gold projects in Idaho and Nevada. We caught up with another company on the Canadian exchange called Western Exploration, which has an adjacent block to where the PVW team have picked up in Nevada. And if you actually want to go further down a bit, there is actually Big Springs, which is in WA8, which is under a takeover from Capricorn. And if you go even further, there's another large gold project down there with a mill as well. So this area in particular in the Carlin Trend is very, very hot at the moment. The value of land has gone up significantly. There's only just the first piece of work being done on this bit of land for quite a while. So again, it's just another one of those projects that sits in the US, and until gold prices recently had this run, it sort of has sat idle. So to have the team out there go out and begin to have a look through the old core, there's an existing resource on there. What's the potential upside on this? We're pretty excited to see where this can go in this particular trend. These are big deposits that can be around this sort of Carlin Trend. So really good to see the management out there who know the area well. They've got their boots on the ground. It's probably something we learnt whilst we're over there, is having people on the ground and understand the area is quite key. It can be a bit different to the way it works over in Australia. So it's actually good to go out there and have a bit of a visual on it.
Yeah, all right. And is it primarily gold that had captured your interest while you were there? Because, yeah, I guess going back to the whole major critical minerals theme, I mean, there's a lot happening in the States right now, and it sounds as if this administration as well would look to get things green lighted in a quicker matter of time.
100%. We actually went to the ground for Great Northern Minerals, GNM, on the ASX, which also borders probably some of the best performers on the ASX to date. Dateline Resources, DTR, Loxley Resources, LKY, and BMM. These companies are all surrounding that MP Materials, which Gina Reinhart owns. I think it's about a 5% stake in. They're worth about $50 billion. But this is the only producing rare earth mine in the US. So we actually had a great opportunity to go visit the ground that GNM's on, and actually go past MP Materials and have a look at their production. And it's quite bizarre when you think of the way we do mining in Australia, and being from WA, you go up to, the Pilbara, and you have a look at the iron ore trains going through, and it's in the middle of nowhere. There was literally, a highway going straight past the only rare earth mine in the US, and it's worth $20 billion. So it was kind of surreal to see what's going on there and how that works. And also the fact that these areas, those four companies that I just mentioned, there's been no real regional exploration work done by anybody in these areas. So to be able to pick these up, again, I'm a shareholder in GNM, and we were out there with the team there to go out there and drive the ground and see what the project entails and see what everybody else is doing out there. I think there's a huge opportunity for this particular region to play catch up. I think you can only have a look at, again, Dateline Resources, which has gone from 0.3 of a cent to a high of 67.5 cents today. These sort of runs, that's a 200% return from January. So they're capped at around just over 2 billion Aussie now. And from what they're telling the market, they're drilling for a carbonatite, a rare earth sort of pipe that's coming, which is right next to MP, and they're quite bullish on that. So if they actually go out and hit something there, this could ignite this whole area. And some of the baby ones that are a little bit early on in what they're doing, are still relatively conservative in their valuations. Some of these ones are under 30 mil Aussie. So it was great to go out there and see these opportunities, but the focus and the openness to doing critical metals, because of what the Trump administration's been doing, it's a bit of an eye-opener out there. It hasn't been like that for a couple of decades, really. So very, very bullish on what they're doing out there, and I don't think it's sort of going to end anytime soon either. This is just the beginning of a probable bull market in these sort of areas. And it's just the leverage that you can get in some of these smaller end plays as well. Coming from such a low base in 21, 22, we were doing IPOs that were at 30, 40, $50 million valuations on day one and doubling. A lot of these companies are coming off low bases of 4 and 5 mil. So the potential to get 10 to 20 times your money is quite significant at the moment.
Yeah, but you've got to do your research. And it must have been good to go from the west coast of Australia to the west coast of the US to see how things are done. Just in a general sort of way, I know that you're playing in the smaller end of the market. Are you generally bullish that we will continue to see enthusiasm there, that, we've turned the corner in some ways in a meaningful manner?
Yeah, and I think just you look at sentiment, you talk to clients. I had a couple call me today and say, hey, I've been sitting on the sidelines for the last, 6 to 12 months, but, I've got a couple $100,000 sitting there. I've got $1 million sitting there ready to go into the junior end of the market. So, that's just a couple of phone calls today from clients. So I think that's a good indicator to show that people are now starting to just dust off their fear of the small cap end and probably the medium cap end as well, and starting to venture out into the market where they're, if you're buying the larger end, there's probably more risk up there. I think, again, Phil King come out and said this recently as well. The large caps, there's downside there because they're potentially fully valued in. So if you can't buy, the larger end of town, you're going to start looking down that curve to the mid caps and the small caps as well to start chasing value and, that potential upside. So that's sort of what we're seeing from clients at the moment, the appetite. And we haven't really seen a frenzy of yet. There's not that FOMO in the market at the moment, but there are people that, have been sitting on the sidelines and they're now starting to come back to this end of the market. So that's sort of a good indicator that we've got a little bit to go in this run. I don't think it's ending anytime soon.
Well, happy days then. And thank you for joining us. We like to keep these things going as well when the market's open. So hopefully we'll speak soon, Keith. Take care.
Thank you.
So let's just get another couple of views actually on European Lithium. It was the stock of the day. Here's Nathan Somasundram from Deep Data Analytics and Kevin Robinson from Team Invest.
The current trend is the US government is going to take positions. And that's mostly been positive for the sector overall for the EV critical minerals. So if you're there, I would be holding on to see how it is because if you're an investor in European Lithium, you are a high-risk investor. So you're not there for a few dollars. You're there for the big run. So I think there's a high chance that we will see some acquisitions play out.
In this case, certainly it wouldn't meet Team Invest requirements. If someone was a holder, like Nathan says, you would have to be a very high risk, I would say speculative. And most Team Invest members that I've spoken to do have a small amount of money in speculative, but I would have already wanted to be there in the case of this one. Mm-hmm. I'd be tempted if I were a holder. I'd be tempted to maybe keep some in, but take some off the table as well.
All right, let's take a look at some of the market leaders today on the 200. Drone Shield continuing its hot run on no news except for just speculation about the level of defense spending and this drone so-called wall in Europe. Linus as well, up by 7.4%. Boy, I wonder if there'd be a takeover attempt on Linus if the US is so concerned about critical minerals and securing supply. It is a processor. Volt Minerals, my guest Nathan said that this is his favorite gold miner right now. It's up by about 5.8%. Iluka as well had a broker upgrade coming through and it's up by 4%. And Sandfire Resources Copper had a great run, and so that has helped to lift some of those copper names to the other end of the spectrum. And Mesoblast down by 6% or 17 cents to $2.58. HMC Capital Digico Infrastructure REIT. So it saw its price target lifted by close to 7% to $3.20 per share by Bell Potter, but not enough to keep it out of the doldrums. Okay, small end of the market now. There's European Lithium, as we've been discussing, up by close to 120% to 25 cents per share. We'll get this online for you shortly if you'd like to have another little listen to what Keith Della Vedova had to say about that one. Down to the downside, Echo IQ. Oh, it was in a trading halt, so it must have come on with an update as to the U.S. Application that it had put in, so I'll read the details on that one. And Nova Minerals down by 7.5% to 55 cents per share. So what's happening tonight? We get EU retail sales. We'll also hear from the ECB President, Christine Lagarde. She's speaking in front of the EU Parliament. Also, Bank of England Governor Bailey speaks at Scotland's Global Investment Summit. So we'll have some central banks speak to get us over the hump tomorrow morning when we get in. All right, speaking of tomorrow, we get the monthly Westpac Consumer Confidence coming through and the Japanese Household Spending Index. So what happened by the end of this session? It was a bit of a fizzle, not a bit, dramatic fizzle, but the S&P ASX 200 ending just marginally lower by about 0.07% to 8,981. We saw Brent putting on some ground in this Asian trade, Bitcoin continuing its record run, gold on its record run as well. U.S. futures higher as we end this session here in Australia, and for the most part, strength around the region, the Hang Seng right now being the exception to the rule. So look, it's been a good day. I hope if you have been on a holiday, you enjoyed yourself, and back to work tomorrow. We'll see you when we're live at 9:45.
The COB is brought to you by Montgomery Investment Management. The world is volatile. Your financial future doesn't have to be. Find out more at montinvest.com.